Hiya Hinsters, I hope you are keeping safe and well. Welcome back to another episode of Bed Hair Astrology. It's Pisces season. I'm roughing it a bit more than usual today, but I hope you don't mind. And if you're new to the channel, my name is Hinny. I'm a spiritual astrologer. You can find my details below if you are interested in finding out more about what I provide. And if you like this video, please do give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you like what I do, or if you haven't already. And don't forget to click the notification bell, because that will actually let you know when I upload new videos or do a live stream. So happy hump day. So I wanted to share first of all a photo with you which I took on the night of February 19th 2019. And that was also a full moon in Virgo, and that's the video's topic today. 19, by the way, is also one of my resonant numbers. But yeah, I took this photo that you can see while walking across the Thames River here in Londinium at around 8:30 p.m. Pisces season had just begun, and the full moon was happening in my third house. Mercury was at 16 degrees, conjuncting my 19-degree midheaven in Pisces, acting also as a kind of bridge between my midheaven and Neptune, which was at 15 degrees in Pisces. Saturn was direct at 16 degrees Capricorn, conjuncting my natal Saturn in the 6th. And yes, I was in the final throes of my Saturn return, and Venus was also transiting exactly on my natal Saturn at the time. Jupiter, the ruler of my natal 6th house, was transiting at 20 degrees of Sagittarius in my 6th house. But anyway, I say all of that because this was quite a special night, which I still remember clearly. About 1 year and a month before I took this photo, I had left a long-term relationship, and I went through a lot of struggle since that moment, and through my Saturn return proper, and I would come to still make quite big mistakes, but overall I had reached, at the time of the photograph, a certain space of independence and security. And on the day that I took the photo, I was making one of my usually sort of weekly or more than weekly visits to my friend's place, where I would go after work. And this friend, he helped me a lot, right from the start of my sort of breakup. And sometimes the walk across this bridge, across the Thames, would be pretty bitter, very wet, miserable, and quite often with too many people, either moving too fast, the rat races trying to get home, or too slow, the dawdling tourists. So it's one of those spaces. It was, this kind of bridge between the end of work and a winding down time that I really enjoyed. And I can't really describe exactly how I felt on the day of the photo, but the nighttime, the sky was very, very still, and it was quite mild, warm even, and there were actually very few people on the bridge that night. And I often talk about on my channel here about how with astrological transits, the energy is gradual, transitional. It may be felt a little before or a little after the official date of any given transit or any given conjunction to your natal planets. And I'm a 12th house mooner, so I can't articulate well how I feel, but I feel. So I guess I was feeling the finality or the closure. Not yet firm, but approaching, growing. And yes, I was physically on a bridge, but also spiritually moving away from one huge phase to another. And at the time, that other phase was very unknown, but anyway, it was some other phase that was to come. And I've been talking about this a lot on my channel recently, especially since the last eclipses that we had in Gemini and Sagittarius, sort of in November, December time of 2020. So you'll know what I'm talking about if you've been following me. But you know, I wasn't just like uprooted from that former huge phase. I was, you know, by looking at this full moon, seeing the whole of that rootedness sort of upturned, completely unnaturally now, and suspended in the night's sky. Hardly me anymore, but still something that must be appreciated, and eventually these roots, they would disappear altogether into the black of the sky, along with the downturned head of that tree as well, leaving only this huge white moon, right? An ultimate marker, a full stop or a period for my American friends, a period signified from the heavens. And you know, this full moon, this week as well, in 2021, is again in Virgo. And Virgo energy, one way I want to describe it is that it's never done. It's never done, though. It's never, what do I want to say? Yeah, it's just never done. And it's never a complete, full cutting off. So wherever you have Virgo, you have this never done sort of energy in that house or houses of your chart. It's never a complete or full cutting off with Virgo. There's this tiny spelk stuck in the minutiae of your new life or your new phase that's coming, or any new phases, any succession of new phases. There's always that tiny spelk. And actually, I really like Paulina Otkina. I've mentioned her and her work on my channel a few times, but she often talks about Virgo being a very small energy, or very small energy, and I like that. And I also think that within this Virgo Pisces axis, along this axis, one of the greatest ways of understanding Virgoan energy is this smallness or this tininess. And we are to sort of sit with or to carry the imperfection of that smallness, or just the imperfection, to carry the residue of past mistakes, of past trippings up. Virgo, the spiritual accountant, the caster of light onto shade, cannot account or cast without making mistakes, without restricting or curling up inward at least a little bit. And in the literal actual constellation of Virgo, the moon, or any planet really, is pretty tiny. Even Jupiter is quite small in this constellation because it's so huge, the actual constellation, compared to the other 11. And there is something ever so massively made a fuss over with Virgo, something that quite often not even the highest sort of promise can subdue. Virgo is spread across a huge swathe of the sky, literally. So effortlessly magnificent, yet it's as unremarkable as a sheaf. Is that the word? A sheaf of wheat. Or like a translucent drop of glue that holds one thing to another, yet which is forever invisible. Unless you rip the parts apart, or you wait forever for that for the decay to reveal that glue, and even then you might not be in luck. And the Divine Venus here on YouTube has talked about Virgo before as being the glue, Virgos themselves being the glue of the zodiac. And you can think about glue and its functions and also its visibility and its prolificness. So anyway, on this full moon in Virgo, we perhaps take a good look at our sort of upside down, uprooted tree in the night sky. Trees are really dear to me, and so is the moon. Some of you know I'm a Cancer rising, I'm a Cancer moon, I'm a Chiron in Cancer. I've got my sun right on my IC in the 4th house in my birth chart in Virgo. So in some ways I often joke that might as well be a Cancer as well. My sun. But Virgo is the tree as well. And I think we're not to mourn. Well, I mean, if we can mourn, we can do that. But we're not to linger, I think, in this lunar moment, but to experience it as a signification of the end, as a big milestone in that eclipse fallout that I've been talking, this eclipse fallout bridge that we are still walking across, and we have been since, right, November, December 2020. And all the moons since that eclipse period have merely been, to me, reminders of a distant end that, with the gradual passage of months, fades a little more into obscurity. Even the new moons. So it wasn't so much about actual newness, but about a sort of freshness that is still joined or chained, linked to that sort of older, more obscure, or ever becoming obscure chapter that is closing. But we also don't forget, the further into the future we go, we still don't forget the outline of what was ended, or what is still being ended, even if it's just like a pressing of the back book cover. Like when you've closed the book, you've finished the chapter, you've closed the book, and it's kind of like we're still kind of in that final pat, especially in Pisces season, we're still sort of in that final pat of the book. When you've read a really good book and you're kind of like, that was nice, that was good, that was a good read. We're still kind of doing that right now. So there isn't any hurry or compulsion, but at the same time there's no need to linger, because we don't disremember the roots, even if we are dismembered or dismembering. But yeah, let's talk about some moony things. Family. Let's talk about family, roots, the moon. And I've never had a great relationship with my own family, my biological family, definitely not, but also the family that sort of raised me. And I might talk about that in another video sometime soon. But, since I was about 19 years old, I'd been mostly away from my hometown. And, once, for a very brief moment, I did sort of go back to my hometown and sort of the literal home house. And the tree in the front garden, we had this tree in our front garden, but I'd found that it had been cut down on that brief revisiting. And as a kid, that tree could be seen from the next street, or even a couple of streets over. You could see it from certain angles. It was that big. It was much taller than the house itself. And if you wanted to, you could tell an Uber driver to just look for that tree and to just drop you off there. That's the only descriptor you would need. So yeah, one day it was just gone. Naught but a stump to rest your feet on, or to put your feet on. And in the back garden, there used to also be a whole row of huge, well, to me at least, I remember them being very huge, dark green conifers. So conifers, they kind of look a bit like pine trees, but they're much sort of softer to the touch and to the look as well, to the eye. They're much sort of softer, much less stiff, and sort of the trunks of the conifer is much thinner, more sort of flexible. But anyway, there used to be this huge row of dark green conifers right at the back, and also by this apple tree, which I think is still there on the left of the garden. But as a kid, I sometimes watched these trees, from the kitchen through the window. And in the wind, the trees, they would sort of, when the wind, like the horrible winds, or just in breezes, nice kind of spring summer breezes, they would ripple. And they would ripple like a shiny green sea. And I'd be moved for just a few moments every time that happened. But when I went back, I found that they'd been cut as well. They'd been cut away, all of them. And I felt, I guess the only word to use is forlorn, but also like speechlessly so. And again, I'm a 12th house mooner, so I didn't ever really, I don't think I even verbalized it or talked about it with anyone, but all the trees were gone, cut away. And they were kind of like casual markers of my own, I guess, being cut out of my own past. It was kind of like scarred earth that I could no longer grow in spiritually. And then, like, much later, I remember when I was doing my undergraduate studies, I lived in another house here in Londinium with a few very close friends. And one day, a tree, if I recall, there was quite a hubbub. Is that the word? Quite a much ado. One or more of the housemates suddenly were like shouting or very excited because this tree had like fallen. It had fallen down, roots and all, right in front of our house. And its head, sort of the foliage part, it landed right by our front door, and it was sort of blocking the way. And it was a fairly big tree as well. And apparently the earth that it was in had been disrupted so much. I think there was like quite stormy weather just prior, or the rains or something had disrupted the soil in such a way. And maybe it was part of maybe it was the conclusion of a very long sort of effect that tree was going through. But anyway, it had become uprooted and disrupted so much that it fell on its own. And I still remember actually the pungent like fragrance of the hundreds and hundreds of tiny little flowers that were in this actual fallen tree, and that the smell was kind of like brazen. And right on our doorstep. It was offensive even, the smell. And I always read back in my life how trees have been very significant for me in different ways. Because now, hardly any of the friends who lived together in that house even speak to each other anymore. And we were like peas in a pod. And one of these friends even abandoned the group, or dismembered themselves from the group so severely that I can't even tell you if that person is alive now or where they are in the world now. I just don't know. And I have Mars in my 11th house, ruling my 11th house too. And so there's always been this sort of rough cutting in my relationships, whether acted on or just had done to me. There's always been this sort of rough cutting in my friendships. 11th house being the house of friendship and friends, or one of the houses. But it's easier to work with now. But I just wanted to kind of share these sort of tree sort of thoughts, feelings that came to me when I was preparing for this video. And I do say all of this to say that this Moonwatch episode does mark the union of the tree and the moon, these archetypes. And we get this sort of meeting or this fusion of the everyday, the common and the root and the past. And being a full moon, you can check my full moon, you can check my what are full moons and new moons video if you want more on full moons. But being a full moon as well, just very briefly, it is a lot of the time about some form of letting go or emotional culmination or spilling over and emotional realization. And we do have this full moon at 8 degrees Virgo. So check your chart. As I always say, check your chart, see which house this falls in for you, see where you have 8 degrees Virgo. Then you can see how this, if at all, affects you. And if you have planets at or very close to 8 degrees of the mutable signs, so that's Virgo, Pisces, Gemini, and Sagittarius, but especially Virgo or Pisces, then this is likely to be even more significant for you, this full moon. So let us know in the comments where you have Virgo at 8 degrees and which house this full moon is for you. But when I say you, when I use this word you, I just want to emphasize that I don't necessarily mean you literally or you as an individual, because it is quite likely that it's more going to be about other people or other things in your life, in your world, because it's only really the first house in our chart that is about you and you sort of exclusively. So if you're a Virgo rising, for example, this full moon could really impact your emotional self, or there could be some release for your body, first house stuff, or some culmination of your personality, first house stuff. And it will vary according to your individual chart and your spirit. So always check out what else is going on in the same house where this full moon is. Other planets, what's the condition of those planets, and let me know. So that's kind of the first house. But if you have the full moon in the second house, for example, this week, then this can bring a letting go of something or someone for like the long-term benefit of your assets or your money, right? Or there could just be some sort of loss. But I feel so long as you've been keeping your mind these past few months on closing that massive chapter, you should be fine, and it shouldn't be too great a loss if there is loss for you. And for those who put a lot into something for your personal assets, then anything material or anything rather material or opportune that you've worked to bring, then there could be some sort of positive culmination for you here. If it's in your third house, let me have a sip of tea. But anyway, if it's in your third house, check in with your siblings, your friends. This is another house sometimes associated with friends, your neighbors, and look out for like volatile reactions. There could also be for some like a highly intuitive moment, or some download or emotional realization, some deep reflection. And the moon is also in its joy in the third house. So I do imagine this full moon would be generally positive for people. There might be some loss or realization of loss when it comes to school or quote unquote lower education, or street kens, that kind of thing. You might even feel compelled to take some short trip you've been sort of putting off or something like that. So yeah, also be sure to take care, because Pisces season will increasingly have this all is not what it seems type of vibe. And check out my March astrology video, which is going to come out very soon, and also my Venus in Pisces video, which I just released, for more on the sort of Piscean energies that are going to start increasing. But if you're having this full moon in the fourth house, then check in with your parents, your family. Look out for volatile reactions or emotional outbursts. Something significant could occur at home or in the house, or again within the family. And this is in your fourth house, which is an angular house. So quite like the first house, it's a very, very significant full moon for you, or event for you. So yeah, it's likely However, that it might not be as external as it is internal. So still very significant, but more internal. And you may experience some private intuition or an emotional brimming up. And this may well have to do with the themes of home or nostalgia or roots or something like that. For those with this in their 5th house, check in with your children if you have any children. There could also, for some people, be something like nice coming up for the children, the child, or relating to children, some sort of final culmination. And this is also a house associated with creativity, or one of the houses. And so perhaps you have some sort of intuitive, creative spurt, and you produce something. And it could be something that you produce that's very Virgoan in flavor. It's also a great opportunity for you to simply emotionally relax and unwind through whatever pleases you, be it food or wine or reading or music, whatever. For some also, there could be some like suppressed sexual desire or sexuality that comes sort of spilling out right about now. So if this full moon's in your 6th house, then I just want to say to take extra care to protect yourself from COVID and other viruses, especially in Pisces season as well. There is much more of a vibing with a sort of just a swimming much more in and out of other people's waters. So be careful of that, literally speaking as well. So contraction of infections or viruses or toxicities from people in the act of that swimming in and out or around and about in this mutable Pisces way. Also though, if you're worrying too much about something or overanalyzing something or being too critical, there could be some injury or ill effects for you. This could be, it's on a scale, right? So it could be tiny, but it happens anyway, or it could be quite huge and significant for you, and it happens. So always look at your chart specifically to get the degree of severity or the degree of like unimportance or, in the grand scheme of things, unimportant. And there could also, for some of you, be some sort of emotional reaction at work or relating to your work or to your service. Specifically anything you'd rather not do but you have to do, that kind of 6th house thing. For those having the full moon in their 7th house, this is again another angular house, so very significant, I would argue, this full moon for those people with this in the 7th. This is in the house where things are said to set, or where the sun is, or the planet rather, is setting. So you may well actually experience some sort of relief or some ease of emotions. For some of you, there might be some commiseration in some sense, and it can be with a partner, a romantic partner, but it doesn't have to be. It can be any other type of person. But especially this concerns your relationships, and again, all relationships, wherein finally something feels perfect or right, or that it's anyway getting on that right road for you and the other person or people. And there could be emotional reactions for some within marriage or partnerships. Watch out also for volatile reactions from others generally, especially if you know someone who's already quite critical. It's quite likely they're going to be even more critical or not missing a trick around the full moon. If your full moon's in this full moon in Virgo is in your 8th house, then for some there is an experience of death. But of course, when we say death, this is interpreted in many ways, and again, it's on that scale. So keep that in mind. And there may be a culmination experience within your shared resources and contracts. And this house also includes inheritance. So there may be someone's death or firing or demise that you come to benefit from. So if this is the very specific case of someone passing away and you fill their position, it's not very nice, right? Someone passed away, but at the same time, your fate is that you are filling that position. You are getting work or responsibility, new responsibility with that. So that's kind of 8th house vibes. I'm going through my 8th house season, Aquarius season, a lot of Aquarius season, and Pisces season. Aquarius season, or planets going through Aquarius for me is very 8th house. I'm experiencing a lot of this where people, they're either overworked, so I have to take on their work, or they have quit, or something else happened and I'm filling in for them, or I'm helping someone with their certain something. So that there's that kind of thing going on for me. So you might have some sort of culmination moment or release or reaction moment in this 8th house realm of shared resources and contracts. Anyway, for the full moon in the 9th house, there may well be some sort of emotional realization or like intuition that provides the answer to some question. And there may be some sort of volatile reaction when traveling. There could also be some culmination of foreign things, or you're finally going abroad for some reason. And some may even have religious realizations or like an emotional heightening of faith in God. And there could, for some, be a spike in nervousness or anxiety triggered by asking too many questions or like wondering too much. So watch out for that kind of thing. Now, with this full moon in your 10th house, check in with your father if relevant, as this is also an angular house, so very significant full moon for these people. In particular, there might be realizations about your career or your calling. There might be like some critical culmination caused by your actions, the house of action. Again, likely pertaining to your reputation or maybe your social media profile or your profiles. Beware of being overly critical in public or being overly reactionary. For some, there may be a loss or a letting go which concerns the career or the calling. Now, with this full moon in Virgo in the 11th house, there may well be a culmination of quite nice things. This is the house of blessings, that kind of thing, good spirits. And so, yeah, a sense of things being perfect again, now that something you hoped for is attained or being attained or close to attainment. And there can be like a culmination moment or nice experience which involves friends. This is the house of friends. You may be compelled to, for example, support an ally through some active service, Virgo energy service, or fixing a problem. And if you're in any group, then again, look out for sort of volatile reactions and like overly critical energies or situations. Finally, if this full moon is in your 12th house, then some people might experience some big loss. This is the house of loss. Again, keep in mind the scale, right? And your particular situation and how that actually translates. So don't be afraid of what this word loss might mean to others, because it might not mean the same to you. Now, an unexpected enemy as well, or some kind of animosity might come out of nowhere, or be going on behind the scenes and sort of culminate. And there might also be like a harsh or critical energy that is experienced around that. Some people might be also just more generally compelled to isolate themselves. Meditation around trees or water could be brilliant around this full moon. Especially if you're dealing with uneasy things, uneasy themes, it could be great to just put yourself alone I don't know, in a forest, if you can, if you're able to go into a forest or forested area, or go by the beach, by the lake, the river, whatever it might be, and see what sort of solace, what sort of ruminations are had from that. It might really help you with this particular weekend, full moon period. And also, please take care of your mental health and be kind to yourself. Beware of going sort of near anything or anyone that carries bad spirit. You're much more susceptible around this full moon. And, you know, similar with the 6th house, what I said for people with the full moon in the 6th house, be careful to protect yourself from COVID, but also other things that could make you sick. And that's kind of it. That's what I've got for you, my loves, for this full moon in Virgo, happening very, very soon officially. So let me know in the comments what you thought, your feelings, your reflections, and of course where you have this full moon occurring for you personally. I love to chat with you. I always try to get back to everyone's comments, so please do leave one. And yeah, that's all for me. I'll be releasing a couple more videos this week, so stay tuned. I love you very much. Stay safe and well. Take care. Salam.